What did I bring that someone? Oh yeah. Why the hell would you
If I need it, about 40 minutes, you can just, I will check it.
Okay, you'll check it.
I'll check it, but of course, feel free to, if I'm not in it. I try not to do that. Everyone is. I didn't want it.
You can put the ball there.
Yeah, let's do that.
You guys have this.
But it was getting really steamy, like on Friday, I was
Okay. Hello, folks. Tell me how to cut the lights here. Hi, folks. Thanks for being here. If you're piling in, please take a seat. Welcome to the final of the Spring 2025 lecture series. Thanks for being here. I want to just take a minute to, again, thank our partners at Potomac Valley for setting up the continuing education credits for all the licensed architects in the room. We very much appreciate that. I want to ask our students to once again register your attendance using the QR code on the screen. Thank you for doing that. And now I want to take a minute to introduce our special guest, Sevince Bayrak. Sevince Bayrak is an architect based in Istanbul. As the co-founder of So Architecture and Ideas, she's currently an associate professor at MEF University in Istanbul as well. Her firm So engages with both architectural and urban issues, especially attentive to transformations of local environments and human nature relationships mediated through architecture. So's works are diverse, including repurposing of a swimming pool into a public hall, a modular chicken coop, which challenges conventional human, non-human relationships, and interdisciplinary research projects on post-earthquake housing. These projects are international in scope, spanning across South Korea, the UK, and multiple cities in Turkey. Their work has won numerous awards, and in recent years, they were nominated for the Mies van der Rohe Award and the Aga Khan Award as well. Sevince co-curated the exhibition Ghost Stories, the carrier bag theory of architecture for the Türkiye Pavilion at the Biennale, the Venice Biennale in 2023. And she co-authored a book of the same title. She's been invited to lecture at Seoul National University, at Swiss Architecture Museum, TU Delft, among other places. And now she's here with us today. So please join me in welcoming Sevince Bayrak.
Hi. Can you hear me? Great. So today I'm gonna talk about our works. So the presentation will have a couple of chapters. The first, and the chapters are not, they're not like, that you can consider them as a book chapters. Like the first one will be the listening to, before going through our works. I will try to talk about our approach in general. And this is a photo from Istanbul. Our studio is based in Istanbul, although we have works in Europe and South Korea, but we are based there, and we love to be working in that city. That is where we also had our architecture education, not our hometown, but me and my partner, Oral, we founded So in 2009. And this picture, we choose it to symbolize the diversity of Istanbul and how there are so many layers in the city. You can just find even in one building that the Roman, Byzantine, Ottoman Empire, these are three empires, and the Republican period you can see in one building. This is a building in the historical part. And also it's a very vibrant city with a self-fulfilling public space. Even there is no public space, people can, even in the cases that there are not many designated public areas, people can just transform it as a public space. So it's a very vibrant city. This is a Ramadan iftar evening in one of the most popular streets, Istiklal Street, the pedestrian street in Istanbul. And also it's not only in case of the human, it's also non-human. You know, we are one of the cities that stray dogs and cats can wander around freely, and they really change the feeling of the daily life in Istanbul. And we believe that all this because although it's not our hometown, being trained as an architect in Istanbul and being based there, it really affected our way of doing architecture. And the second chapter is learning from. So because we are, I mean, this is the, we are in a country that has a empire previously, and starting from 1923, a new republic was founded. And we just celebrated the 100 years 2 years ago. So it's a young country, let's say, in terms of the republic. And then if we go through the urban strategies in the last 100 years, we can start with the revolutions when the founder Atatürk founded, and then in the second phase in Istanbul, these are mostly in Istanbul. The second phase was the Prime Minister Menderes, and it's more about demolitions because Istanbul is an old city. So in order to make a new national building, they need to demolish a lot. And then in the third phase of privatizations, after the 80s, everywhere in the world, it becomes more popular to design cities based on this privatizations act. And the last 2 decades we have been are also when our practice was formed. It was the uneven growth of this urban period, which was like, and we can define that this era of like major, like mega scale projects that were also affecting the cities. I will just give you a glimpse of these ones from the last 2 decades. This is one of the biggest parks in Taksim Square. That's the center of Istanbul, we can say, the heart of Istanbul. And this green area was planned in the early Republican period in the 30s. It's called Gezi Park, and in 2013 it was supposed to be the park was supposed to be demolished, and then instead of the park there's going to be the reconstruction of an old barracks there as a shopping mall. And there was this biggest protest, urban protest during this Gezi Park renovation, and then the government had to stop the project. And this one is the third bridge. So we have, Istanbul is a city with a Bosphorus dividing the city, dividing 2 continents, Asia and Europe. And then we have this bridge. We already have 2 bridges, and this is the third bridge. And when you build a bridge, then because the third bridge is just built in the middle of the forest areas in the northern part of the city. So it doesn't really, it's not only the bridge itself, but then the whole connection roads and whole new areas open to be development. And as you can see here, this is one of the biggest mega projects of the last 2 decades, the Kanal Istanbul. So this, the one, is there a pointer, do you think? Okay, it's okay. So this one on the left, that's the Bosphorus, the natural one. And the plan of Erdogan is to make another canal there, to have another Bosphorus, a second Bosphorus, which would open up another 1 million city development around. And this is and there is also the third airport. Maybe you might have known the biggest airport now we have. And this was during the construction of that. This is not an AI generated image. That a huge area that has been carved from the forest and agriculture area, carved to make the airport. And then we have faced multiple crises, like the first one is like Syrian civil war, Russia-Ukraine war that ended up with a lot of migrations because Turkey was one of the very few countries that opened the door both to Russia and Ukraine. And of course, Syrian civil war because we're neighbors. And we have earthquakes and pandemic and economic crisis. So this was just to give a general idea about the way, the context we are producing architecture. And this is again not an AI-generated image, and this was one of the you see in the middle of a very forest area in Bolu, in a city in Turkey. These villas that, like almost 500 villas that were built for the Gulf country residents that are trying to buy houses in Turkey. But in the crisis, during the crisis of 2018, the company bankrupt, and then all this settlement is left abandoned like this. And this become very famous. I mean, if you go to Dezin, this is one of the most read news of the 2019 from Turkey. And these are not only that one, but these are other like construction access, let's say, in the city. It's again in Istanbul. And we have a lot of construction in Turkey because I'm sure it's very similar in US, in China, in UK. The construction is one of the triggering sectors of economy. So, but we have the case in Turkey, we have a lot of a variety of buildings. So this is a building, an airport that has never been used. And this is a cable car station that was never used. And this is the abandoned theme park that was previously one of the public forests of the early Republic area. That is open only for 2 weeks because it was built on the swamp area. All these roller coasters, this was the biggest theme park in Europe, but it couldn't stay open because they were built on the swamp area. And in general, there is this addiction, not only in Turkey, but in the world. There is this addiction of construction that is triggered by economic reasons rather than special needs. So it's the construction addiction that makes a building exist without a real necessity. We don't really need these buildings, but the system needs it, economic system needs it. And like a shopping addict's wardrobe stuffed with unnecessary items, these are filled with disused buildings and useless infrastructure. This was one recent news from, you see the Bloomberg, it's the international version, about showing a very beautiful post constructed in Turkey again. And but because our approach is never just to draw a very dark panorama and leave it like this and just to complain, but just to try to make a story out of it, a hopeful story out of it. And it was the third chapter is about transformation, always transform. This is the Lakatomwasal's quote that is really inspiring for us. We'll try to listen to the existing flows and learning from existing cycles and building around the stories and transforming the existing. So I will now show a couple of projects. So our practice was at the beginning mostly on competition. You know, when you're a young studio, if you don't have like contractor friends or relatives that would hire you, you need to do competitions. And then this was again a competition. The Young Architect program that has been done in New York, MoMA PF1. This was the collaboration with them the first time in Istanbul. And the brief was to have a shading unit in this modern art center garden. And the garden, because the program has been done in New York for 15 years, we were just finding an idea of installation. And then we were like, okay, they did that. And this one, they also did that. So we decided to, okay, if we want to do something original, maybe it has to be site specific. And the site is interesting because it's next to Bosphorus, but you see the fences. It just prevents you to go to the seaside because it's the customs area that the cruise ships arrive there. And then the section of the site is like this, like on pillars. The garden was on pillars. And the brief was having a shading unit. And we thought the simplest shading unit, like an umbrella thing. But rather than fixing it on the ground, what if they would float on the water? So that because you're not able to cross through the fences, but then the movement of the sea could come to the garden. This was the main idea. And then we won the competition. And we collaborated with a coastal engineer. And then this was how we were imagining the movement will be. And this was the final thing that the umbrellas constantly move with the shades of Bosphorus. And then we used this, because we spent all the budget because we were also the contractor of this project, we spent all the budget to the divers working underground and the umbrellas. For the seating units, we use the cheapest thing, that is car tires, because it's a car country as well, and to cover them with fishing nets. So we have this landscape units as well with unexpected uses. And this is the area. Now there is no longer this, you will not be able to see that museum. Now this, the whole area, whole customs area is regenerated at Galata Port. And you see the new building designed by Renzo Piona, and this program no longer continues. And this is another, right after this installation was realized, because in the architecture work, people want you to realize projects, but it's really difficult to make a big scale project realize before you're 40, because you're a young architect. And then these other installation projects came up. This was again a competition in London, in the middle of, in the front of Royal Academy of Arts. Mainly the competition was to have an installation inside the building, but because of some visa problems, we couldn't go see the building. We were just trying to see the Google Street View images, trying to understand. And we realized this corner, and everyone in any image, someone was sitting on the corner. And you know, it's a reflex from Istanbul because we have these pop-up public spaces everywhere. And we suggested in the jury, okay, but why would we not just turn this around into a public space, just remove the barriers because people definitely need it, and put this installation rather than putting it inside the Royal Academy. And this was a ceramic installation, and because the sponsor was ceramic. And then we won the competition, and then it stayed like 6 months. And it was like, you know, every night we were praying because some drunk people climb up on this like ceramic thing, and it's raining all the time, but hopefully we finished it without any bad things happening. And this was, it was really interesting to see how this really like transformed that whole spot. And it was, when we presented it in the jury, the British guys, they were like, why didn't we think of this before? Because, you know, it's like an Istanbul reflex to try to regenerate every small corner you have. And then we had this one, another installation in Rome, in Maxi. The museum designed by Zaha Hadid, this super chic museum. And this was, I think this was the most difficult installation brief we had, because the curators want us to have Istanbul, the public space in Istanbul, in this very chic, elegant area. And at that time, it was 2015, right after Gezi protest that I told it at the beginning. The government was taking using this crowd control barriers everywhere to stop people to get together, and also they're using it for construction sites as well. But then there's such a strong daily life in the city that they become part of the city, as you see. After a while, people start not to think about it, and they use it for their own shops, even to dry peppers on it. And then it becomes a subject that taken for granted rather than for crowd controlling. And then we decided to use these elements, and then because Istanbul, the public space in Istanbul, it's always like interrupted, but there is still a way you can continue. So we decided to put these, because there was this section they gave us for the installation, the intersection of these two galleries. And then we decided to put them there, but there is still a passage in between where you can make your way through. And this one, the last one in South Korea, this is a recent project. It's again an international biennial in Susong. And the main, it's really interesting in the South Korean cities because the country is full of nature and also it's full of technology. So you can easily see this conflict, not let's say conflict, but this thing in the city. It's very visible. And they have their own, like, because the cities are, the Han River in Seoul, and all in South Korea, the rivers, waterways are very important. And then our site was also next to a water reservoir, and then we wanted to make this cycle of nature visible with this installation. And also this map is from Istanbul. It's really similar between Seoul and Istanbul, how the nature is going through the city. These are the sections of the waterways, the old waterways, because it's a very slopey city, to have the water circulate all around the city. You can still see them. And then it's really interesting to see that in the Korean architecture culture, there is this connection of wood and stone, because we were foreigners. That was our first time in South Korea. We were just looking everything with curiosity. And this connection was also interesting. And then we decided that, okay, we need to make a permanent installation. The brief was to permanent installation for people to have a self-reflection next to this area. So the name of the installation is Supra, which is the opposite of infra. So the infrastructure in the cities, we talk about a lot, but trying to make it that cycle to be seen and to be up on the ground. So this was the section. And the main idea was to have a slope. It's really simple, to have a slopey roof and to have some rain coming through there and then circulate the rain on the ground. So this is the site. This is a huge K-pop concert area. And this is where our installation is located. And because the rocks, when you go to South Korea and you walk around, they really have huge rocks and real rocks in the landscape and everywhere. And now we decided, well, maybe we can use them as structural elements here in this section. They're structural elements. And you see when the rain comes, it will go down on this very small drainage line on the ground. And it becomes a simple canopy just next to the lake to have self-reflection. Although this part of structure is not that simple, because when you use stones and the rocks, then you need other elements to combine it. And this learning from the cycles is like a very major thing in our architectural approach. And also, well, it's being based in a country where there are a lot of excuses and there are a lot of problems like economical, political, and also earthquake, natural things. But we should still do good things even in this scene. That's our main idea. And this was, and we, as architects, we were asking ourselves, because it's a country on the earthquake zone. This is how the fault, earthquake fault goes to Turkey, and the Russian plate pushes from the up, and Middle East plate pushes down, and then it starts to crack. This is quite similar to the politics as well. And then it's here you see the fault, and this is Istanbul. The question mark is Istanbul, and you see on the fault there had been major earthquakes, which means that because the earthquake triggers each other, which means that in 30 years we'll have an anticipated big earthquake around 7 magnitude in Istanbul as well. And then we started to ask, okay, what should we do as architects? Because in general, in the literature, the architects do some kind of affordable houses, shelters for earthquake. That was our main idea. Maybe we can also design something for that. But then the main idea was, let me pass through. The main idea was where to put it rather than how kind of a shelter, because the gathering areas, as you see, after the earthquake, has been privatized on the last 2 decades that I was talking about uneven growth. So the main question was not what kind of a shelter, but where to put that shelter after the earthquake. It's like, for example, this was a stadium, and then it was redeveloped as this mixed-use project. And this was a public area redeveloped again. And these were all designated earthquake gathering areas, public areas, but then they privatized it and they become these mixed-use projects on the left. This is the map of Istanbul and showing which parts will need the most housing after the earthquake. The red part shows the most vulnerable areas. And this is Golden Horn. So we have Bosphorus, which divides the continent, and we also have an inlet called Golden Horn, where the historical peninsula meets Pera. So we decided, okay, where to put these shelters? If we cannot put it on land, maybe we should put it on water. Because this part is safe from tsunami, we proposed this post-disaster floating house. It would sound weird. But also there is this floating houses tradition in Turkey in the 50s, for example. This is in Bosphorus. When having a summer house is very expensive, people were building, but this is done by a famous architect as well, building these kind of floating houses in Bosphorus so that they will have a cheaper way of enjoying sea and sun. You can see all these other options. They were in the 50s, not now, back then. And this was the floating unit we designed. And the main idea was not to provide this as a solution, but more like a speculation. Do you find this image weird, of floating post-disaster house? Then you should go back to reclaiming the gathering areas, because we no longer have them. And then we decided to make it folding, because when it's folded, it's like 80 centimeters thick. And then because the reason is we have earthquakes all around the country, like in every 2 or 3 years. That's why we need this reusable shelter design. And this became super famous. And in Turkey, people didn't really care about it very much until the recent earthquake we had in 2023. But this was published in Taiwan, even from Texas, disaster housing, they called us. And we said, in Texas, do you have earthquake? They said, no, we have hurricanes, and we want to use this after the hurricane. So this was super popular all around the world, like exhibited in Danish Design Museum and Nazi as well. In Turkey, we didn't have any response until the earthquake. And this was how it was folded and opened, as you see, because after the earthquake, we will not have manforce, a quality manforce that will do all this reconstruction thing. So we needed to come all equipped and fully equipped and to be easily installed on site. This was the main idea. Now this year, it's going to be also exhibited in the Venice in the main exhibition. So earthquake victims live minimum 6 months, or now in the biggest earthquake, we have even longer in the containers after the earthquake, because it took so long to rebuild the new houses. This was also one of the main ideas. If you live such a long time in a post-disaster shelter, then it needs to be really comfortable, also affordable. And this we had the chance to build up a prototype for the Design Biennale with our sponsors. And this was the built-up prototype, the realized project. And it really floated on Golden Horn. And then the project we did in 2018. But last year, 2 years ago, we had this very devastating earthquake that affects a whole area almost as big as France. So it's such a devastating one. And then when we were working on that project, the main question was that because the floating house would be like shaking, on the water, the question was, because we were also collaborating with sociologists and coastal engineers, it was like a joint architectural studio of sociology, engineer and architecture students and tutors, professors. The sociologists were asking, okay, do you think people would like to stay on sea and shake? But this was after the earthquake, and we couldn't really answer that back then. After the earthquake in 2023, that Istanbul municipality sent these big ships to the earthquake zone, and people stayed there. And when it's become, and then all other companies. So this one is like used as a school, the other one used as temporary housing. And then it became, when they asked to the residents living there, the answer was, are you afraid of the shakes of the sea? The answer was, no, we don't want to be on the soil, because the earthquake is soil related. So even if we shake, we are on the water, we really feel safe. And this was really interesting. And this was a shootage from the site that we took, from the earthquake site, we took right after the earthquake, like 1 month after the earthquake. And you can see that it's super sad. And this view continues like for 500 kilometers. I don't know how much miles is it, but from here to New York, let's say, okay? It's such a big area that was affected from the earthquake. But the weird thing is that in Turkey, so Turkey is one of the first country in the world that has a lot of ready-mix concrete centers all around the country. And it was until 2015, it was the first country for importing concrete all around Europe. So they have really good concrete in Turkey. And also the contractors of Turkish contractors in the world list, for example, 250 top contractors list, we have 40 contractors. We are second after China or maybe US. So we do have to make construction, we have good concrete, but then how could we end up with this devastating view? Oh, it's because of this addiction I was talking about. Because if the architecture is not done for the needs, but for economics, then you need to make the fastest and cheapest thing, not the most strongest and the robust building. So this was another graduate student project that we were doing in the university, that they designed with this ready-made concrete, collaborated with this company, and having these living units that could be installed all around. And this was a realized prototype as well, tiny living prototype. And this was another tiny living project, because as you see, these are all related, because we started working on the earthquake and this tiny living prototypes. So we built up one for ourselves, we buy this land, and there was this American professor at the university at that time, and I was showing him, he said, did you buy this undesirable piece of land? And I was like, yes, we did. And we want to put a cabin on it. And then we designed this cabin, and it was built up because I mean it's really important to work with timber prefabricated timber. In this case, when you are working in the earthquake region or rural areas, because it's really difficult to have quality construction there. So it was built somewhere, and then we put it on the land. And then we started living in it like in the weekends and etc. And after 5 years, I wrote an article to Arc Daily to showing what we have learned, because we put this very nice object of housing, and it was, you know, it was also again published everywhere in the world, very popular. But then we turned this into like a shelter like this, because the needs this is the design of architect, and this is the design of the inhabitant. In this case, it was both us. But it took us some time to realize, because we were living inside, that only a building is not enough. You need shadow around it. So you need other structures. And so this was how it was reformulated. These were the photos that we took in the beginning, that clean Scandinavian style like photos. Now we have toolkits full of objects everywhere. And yes, this is the most famous projects. For example, when we go somewhere in Europe, like an architecture festival, they show us all the architects of the coop. So it's super popular, even than us. But this was also one of the most difficult projects, because chickens were the most challenging users. They do not learn, they do not give feedback, and they do not adapt. They die if you do something out of their routine. And they do not pay. So if you don't pay, why would you need to live in this house if you don't like it and if you don't pay it? Because if you're a human, even if you don't like it, because you paid it, you have to live in that one. So the first question when we asked to this crazy artist who is running this art and architecture farm project in the eastern part of Turkey, that, oh, what if they don't use it? What if the chickens won't use it? And he says, okay, no, I trust you. He's a really nice artist, and he doesn't really, he tried to convince us that we could do that. And then we started working on it. And mostly in US, there is a huge literature about chickens. Like there is this Neufert, you know that Neufert book? Neufert of chickens, that how they live, what is the length of their wings, how they sleep, how they do. So we started to make a huge research. And also we contacted with the coop owners or farmers to learn more about chickens, because this was the case as architects that we could not take risks. Either the chickens would die or they would not use it. So it will be failure in any case. And then we designed this prefabricated timber structure, because the owner previously he did something on site and he was strictly wanting to be prefabricated because it was super difficult to work in that rural area. And then although the final image looks like very chic, elegant, like coming from space thing, the whole design is based on principles of chickens living, like these 12 principles. So the first one is the robust structure for earthquake, because it's again an earthquake zone, as you see. The second one is modular structure for easy maintenance, because they didn't know how many chickens they would have. They would like to make it bigger or smaller, so it's modular. The third one is easy cleaning, because it's really important to keep the coop clean, because if there's an infection or they die suddenly. And then it should be easily cleaned. And this one, socializing. Chickens are social animals, so they need a place to socialize. But this was in a condition, very hard climate conditions. In summer, it's 40 degrees. In winter, it's -40, it's super cold. So we had this shadow area for the socializing. And this one, natural ventilation, it's very important. The coop has to be ventilated, not to be smelled bad, not to smell bad. But then the ventilation shouldn't go over from the chickens, then they get sick. So it has to be on top. The windows has to be on top. And daylight control. When chickens are incubating, they don't want any daylight. So it has to be an indirect daylight inside the coop. And providing shadow. It's important in summer. And snow protection, because in winter it's very snowy, it has to have a snow protection with the roof. And protection from predators, because they dig down and then they enter the coop. That's why we raised it. And sleep roosting bars. It's interesting that chicken poos when they sleep. They poop when they're sleeping, so they shouldn't be sleeping like in the same direction, otherwise they will poop on each other. So this is why the section is angular. And ergonomic circulation for chickens. So they need to be entering this structure by themselves. And collecting eggs. The more human enters the chicken coop, the risky it becomes because of infections. People can take infections inside. That's why the collecting eggs is from outside like this. It's like a Kinder surprise when you open it and see if there's eggs or not. And then this was published in Fast Company, like that. I want to move to Turkey and become a chicken. It's more beautiful than your house, although it was really based on chicken's routines. So this one is, so our practice is mostly like listening to the existing and reusing things, repurposing things. But in this case, the owner didn't want, that was this old house, and they didn't want to keep it. We tried to convince them. No, they said, we had this dream of our new house, we don't want to keep it. So the only thing we reused was the stones of the old house. And then we designed this house, because it has two facades and it's in the Mediterranean village, which has really strong summers. So it has two facades, it's two-phase house. One facade is full of stones. This is the southern facade to prevent heat from the sun. And this is the northern facade, which opens also to the view. This two-phase house. As you see, this is the open air bathroom edition. That was also the client's idea. I mean, the dream to have a bath, open air bath. These are the interiors. And the last part, building around the stories, transforming the existing. So as I told you, there is this variety of unused buildings in Turkey that we need to talk. These are the laboratory of the future. We need to talk how to gain them again, how to reuse them. And before we started working on this carrier bag theory of architecture, which was the name of the exhibition, also our book in 2023, Venice Biennale, Turkish Pavilion. This was the first project in 2015 that we started to adapt the village project. This is a very ugly building designed as a shopping mall. You see this huge atrium. But then the municipality was using this as a community center, and they want us to repurpose, to redesign the building, redesign the whole atrium, because the atrium was done for people to have to walk through the shops. We had these connections because there were no longer shops; they were like libraries, workshops, and etc. Just to make shortcuts inside the building, and it was in a small district in Istanbul. But this community center becomes super popular because of this new design. And the mayor then, previously back then in 2019, during the elections, he used this building in order to promote public architecture and because he was the candidate of the Istanbul for Istanbul after this building. You have renovated the facade. This is the mayor when he was the mayor of the city. He's now the mayor of Istanbul, but now he's in jail. I don't know if you. So it's a really sad story because he was supposed to be the next candidate for presidency, and he was in jail. And then this was the video he used while he was a candidate for Istanbul mayor in the building. And then the question was, can architecture trigger political innovation? And he's saying that, okay, we did a lot of public works in the city, in this district. We'll even do more in the city. And this was the city hall in Istanbul that was built in 60s. You see the 60s architecture, like international style, elegant building. And then when he becomes the mayor, because one of his he was suggesting that he would keep this part is Parliament, City Hall, and the other block, office block, he would turn the office block to be an open library, public library in the middle of, because it was already not enough for the municipality. And you see there is this square in front of it, and there is a pool. You can see a huge pool in front of it. But then this is the original design. that was done in the 50s, a competition project. As you can see, there was no pool there because, you know, why would you put a huge pool in front of a building? The brief was, back then, the brief was to have a huge square, because it's a city hall, to have people to gather there. But then in the 1960, there was this military coup, and after the coup, the design changed, and they decided to build this old pool, which is a very good-looking, elegant landscape element, but it would prevent people to gather on the square. So it was back then in the 70s. There was this workers' resistance. You see the workers, they're like next to the pool. And then this was how it turned out to be in the 70s, that they emptied the pool, and this was a whole area for gathering. And then when the mayor was elected, that he called us to repurpose this building as a library. And then we said, okay, we are not able, because then the building was listed, second grade listed. But when the ruling government heard that she has this project of turning it into a public library, they just raised the listing rate. They had a first grade listed. I think this is the only modern style building, because we have all Ottoman monuments as first grade. Modern style building that is being listed as a first grade. And then we proposed, okay, we have to keep the pool, but there was this car park next to the pool, and we proposed to turn this car park into a square, because that's what was needed. And then this photo is taken very recently, because when the mayor is put in jail, like 3 weeks ago, there was this huge resistance in the city, all around the country. Not only because they protest this detention, but also it's there's this general protest around what's going on in the country. And as you can see, you don't even need a square to do this, because this, as I said, this self-fulfilling public space, because this is the main road. These are all roads. There's no square there. And this one was, again, so this kind of public space projects is not very common, but it's becoming even more common. This was in a district in, okay, I have 2 more minutes. In a district in Istanbul, which is one of the densest districts with a huge young population and a big drug problem. And one of the things that the drug dealers were hanging around was this kind of abundant green areas, as you can see in this case. And the new mayor, he decided to turn these areas into parks so that people will use it, and they will know, because it's also a big need of open areas and parks that are very few in this very dense district. And this was our proposal, to turn it into like a linear park. This is also built, realized project, or recently realized project. And then the very main thing in this design, not all this design, but the thing that we have, you know, these existing very small buildings on top. They're like more like favela style buildings, but we left some kind of garden, because they already have gardens previously. And then we decided to keep some gardens for them as the buffer zone between the park and the houses. And there's this very small cafe, like common table with edible plants, and this pollinator houses, and then we plant pools, playground waters with sand, and etc. As you can see, those were the buildings I was talking about, and how there's buffer zone between them and the park, because normally the municipality has all the area until the buildings. They want to make utilize the park. And there's a side solitaire, which is also continuing its position in the project. And this last one, pool project, that is also the main idea of this, where the main idea of this theory comes from. And it was, again, this was a park, as the park in the theme park. Remember the theme park I was telling? This was, again, one of the 2 biggest forest projects of early Republic Atatürk period. This was in Istanbul, a huge human-made park. And then in time, the bureaucrats, when they ruled the city for 20 years. The same party ruled the city for 20 years before this mayor. And then they decided to invade this part as their own residential areas, as a private area. And then one of the things that was the promises of the new mayor was to reclaim this back as a public space. And then there were these two areas, like this one was hangars and this one that we repurposed as event areas, gathering areas like this one. And there was this pool, this swimming pool that they didn't know what to do with. And then we also proposed maybe we can turn it into, well, this was an abandoned pool with a structure on it. It was a newly built structure. And then because a pool is mainly a foundation, when you get rid of the water, it's a concrete foundation. We decided to keep it and have it like this, like an amphitheater, a pool for people. And this was one of the events that they with the mayor and the young people. And this was the inspiration starting point of the carrier bag theory of architecture, that the buildings because this was not a very beautiful building. When we finished it, when we put it on Instagram, we were sure that it was not going to take a lot of likes because of the Instagram algorithm. But then it needs a story. And we decided to think, okay, we don't need to make beautiful buildings, but maybe the story itself is maybe more important in some cases. And this is the book we published, and this was the manifesto. So if you're interested, you can find it on the website, more details. And this was how the Turkish pavilion we created was filled with information about this abundant structures, and also the ways how we can turn them into hopeful scenarios. So the whole cloud structure on top was presenting abundant structure stories around the country. And on the tables, we were discussing ways, manifestos, and methods, tools to repurpose buildings. And this was an AI-generated video to just have, because we had an open hall and we had a lot of buildings all around Turkey. And then we asked AI to regenerate them. And then at the beginning, it was just completely cleaning up the whole building and making some new things. And we need to train it to not to demolish and to have like small interventions. It was an interesting period. This was also part of the biennial. And these are not our projects, but these were other projects in the last 5 years, public projects that are repurposed areas of industrial zones, existing buildings, and etc. Yes, that's all for now. Thank you. And if there are
Wonderful. Great. We can open up for questions. I see one in the back. I'll start there. Get up there.
Merhaba. So you said it sounds like a lot of your projects are centered around responding to the needs of the community surrounding your sites and such. And I wanted to ask how much of your design process is just talking to people, and how do you, I guess, start trying to figure out what those needs are?
Thank you. For example, this one, in modular, this one, it has a lot of, we spent really some time to gather information around, and also not also information, but also to create a dialogue with the inhabitants, because the main success of the project will start when they possess it, when they start to use it. So rather than just trying to make it park and putting it there, but like a top to bottom approach, just to listen to the needs and etc. And for example, this bicycle repairer, he was one of the main figures of that area, and then he wants this new he wanted to have this new solid. That was the beginning of the park, because he was already there. He knows everyone. He did have the gatekeeper, he knows the neighborhood, because he knows everyone, the kids, the young people, they come there. It's like a spot. So it was important. And there was, again, back to the cafe, there was this, maybe the house for Alevi people, that we also contacted them about the relationship with the cafe and the building. So in this project, it took some time, but well, it depends. For example, in the pool project, there was no neighborhood, not a community, but the people, the municipality who is trying to repurpose the area. And in that one, for example, their need was the event halls areas in the place, but they didn't have to repurpose, they didn't have any money to repurpose the existing buildings. But then we convinced them to not to build, because the forest has been made until, starting from the early 1930s in time, it's gradually made in time. So any construction you would do in this site would be like, would harm the around. So it depends on the project. Yeah.
Hi, I love your idea of the floating house. My only question when seeing it was how did like showering and using the bathroom on a daily basis happen, especially when it came to like folding the house back up?
No, when you fold it back, you will not do it, but of course, I mean, the folding is only, for example, there is this earthquake in Istanbul, and then they use it for 6 months, and then there's another earthquake in another city, about the necessity here, and that you can just fold it and just transport it to another place.
So they take that like bathroom system out?
No, I will show. The bathroom system is on the ponton. The ponton is the foundation they call. Just a minute, I will show. You know that project is made of 2 parts. There is this steel part that you can fold, and there is this basement part which would either float or put on land. And all the infrastructure is based on that one. I will hopefully find it. Like, yeah, here. So you see this white part?
Oh.
The whole, I don't know if we have any other photos of it. All the toilet and all the water the plumbing is on it. You see that concrete part? Everything is on it. Like the toilet is a squat toilet and etc. And the shower part as well. So you're not holding that part.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. It was really, really exciting. Like to be able to see a young architect, like be able to work in like smaller scale architecture and like start building up a portfolio. And like the ability to see like how I could build a future or how any of us could. So my question is about that. As a young architect, like coming from like a graduate school education or an undergrad education, as you're building up a practice, like it is an incredibly hard challenge to get jobs, and especially as somebody trying to build up trust. How did you do that? What was what, as opposed to like maybe your peers who may not have been as successful, or other people who like start practices? What were the challenges that you guys like overcome, and what kind of set you guys apart? And how'd you get those jobs for like are really hard to get? They're competitive. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been asked this question after. In any case, in the university, then I wish I had this spot answer I could give you guys, but I think, well, it took long. No, I mean, if the first 10 years, we started in 2009, and the buildings, the building I show, the real building, the installation we had done, but the real building was in 2009. So we were graduate at 2005. So it took 15 years to finish the first buildings, have the job and to finish it. But then the competitions were away, because I mean, if your parents are not architects, if you don't have contractor as like relatives, you need to do a competition. But again, it's difficult in competitions. There's too much like a rival there also. And then because we really try to publish everything we do, and these installation projects help us become more popular in Europe, in the young architecture scene. And because Turkey, I think the powerful part of being in Turkey is that we are very close to Europe, so we can go join any kind of community in Europe, the young architects community, and that would also really help. And there is too much luck, you know. Who would know that this building in Beylikdüzü, then the guy became mayor of Istanbul, and we had more things. But if things didn't go that well, we were still building up a network in Europe and in the world. So international network. The other part helped us to become famous in Istanbul, because in Istanbul it's more, you know, the architects who are doing real estate projects, like big scale projects. They became more famous. They got more jobs. So the thing, I think you just need to be very insistent and like very hopeful, not try to fall down. But I'm sure it's super difficult. Now, when I go back to see this 20 years we passed after the graduation, I feel like, how did we do that? Why did we do that? But then it goes. So there is a way to do that. Yeah.
Thank you for your presentation. I just had a follow-up question about the infrastructure of these emergency structures. I assume, well, I guess a question, is there a connection to electricity that can be applied, or this is assumed that it's totally off the grid? And in that case, also, how does the plumbing function?
Well, the thing is, the unit itself is like, as you see, like it's solar panels, it has to be self-sustainable. But in the case of reality, after the last earthquake, we saw that even applying those solar panels or finding them, because you need a big amount of them in the case of a disaster, a huge disaster. So it would not be very realistic, maybe. But then, because we did this interdisciplinary architectural design studio at the university with engineers, they worked the whole part about this energy thing, like with water, electricity. And the thing is, because they're connected to land at some point, so there will be main plants of like electricity or water storage and etc. on the land that would connect to these units. That could also be another scenario. Because in the case of Istanbul earthquake, after 3 days, so the Department of Water or the electricity, they are planning to give to become on grid again in 3 days. But that's the scenario, you know. But this was a discussion also in the interdisciplinary studio that engineers put on the table, and it's also a very important part of it. It's not only architects, you know, who just a big problem.
Any other questions? No. Wonderful. Well, Sevince, thank you so much for explaining to us the carrier bag theory of architecture. We also want to thank you because you've been engaged in our community today, throughout the day. You were at a workshop in Architecture 408, which I heard went fantastic. You had coffee with our student organization, FAME, the Future Architects of the Middle East. So thank you for all of these different ways you've contributed today. And thank you for this, and thanks for everything. Let's
This was